Today, I'm here with Ariel, and we're going to talk about...
Poetry!
Wait, hold on. Poetry. So, I've been wanting to make a video about poetry for forever. You guys have been asking me to do videos about poetry, and I figured what better time than when Ariel is in the country. So you're a big poetry lover, right?
I love poetry.
And a poetry writer.
I am.
Yeah.
That is true. You could call me a poet.
See, I'm always like, oh, I don't really read poetry. I'm like, I did a degree and we read quite a bit of poetry.
Yes.
So I guess I do.
That's really
read
interesting,
poetry.
because now you mentioned that, I also did basically the same degree. We both have English lit degrees, and I read a lot of poetry throughout my degree, but that didn't feel like it counted, because it wasn't me actively wanting to read poetry, it was just them handing it to me and me having to write about it.
How do you feel about, like, modern poetry versus, like, classic poetry? Do you have any favorites?
I love poetry. I'm very excited about poetry. I love writing it, I love reading it, and I love going to spoken word nights.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm brand new to it. I think I feel that because I don't understand the canon. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like I'm super well read in the, like, official classic poets.
Interesting.
And because of that, I have found such solace and excitement in modern poets.
Yeah.
Because to me, they're the people that are currently writing things that really resonate with me. But I'm having such a good time going through the old and the new.
See, I'm a big fan of the old, because I feel like, for me, poetry, the more I read it, the more, like, literally a poem, every time I repeat it, I'm like, it means more to me now. And I feel like part of the enjoyment is in the familiarity of the words. I don't know, I get so much joy from being like, oh, this sentence has been here for like hundreds of years.
Yeah, I really agree with that. One of my favorite things about old poetry is knowing that it has meant something to hundreds of thousands of millions of people for such a long time.
I'm like a sucker for iconic quotes.
It's
really terrible. Yeah, I really
Are you gonna be like an old lady who has like all those quotes up in her wall?
Maybe.
Like me, like little knitted quotes all over the house.
We're gonna talk a little bit through some of the poetry we've read recently, some stuff that we read during our degree, some stuff we want to read. I feel like this is my original Poetry 101 video, which hopefully, when I read more, I'll make more.
This ship's about to sail.
Where do we begin? Do we start with some classics? Do we talk about the degree ones? This is my Norton Anthology of English Literature, the Romantic Period, which was my fave.
This was an actual school text.
1 of 5 parts.
Yeah.
Did you have to get
I had to do the Norton Anthology.
Yeah, it's interesting.
We've all been
basically just like a cheap way, well, cheap-ish, of getting all of this stuff. So basically they've made a selection with, you know, I'm sure we can assume it's very male and very white. This is kind of the deal with what you read at university, which is bad. At the time, I had no idea. I also have a feeling that we had this professor who I'm pretty sure was working really hard to get all these, like, female old school writers on the list. I don't feel like I appreciated it for what she was doing at the time.
When I was in my degree, whenever they tried to deviate from the list, I was like, but I want to read Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
But I want to know why Catcher in the Rye was relevant. And now I'm like, I should have completely abandoned those. Moved on to new, interesting, alternative, other.
Yeah. I had like all these little tabs in it, which I've taken out.
Dang it.
There's the one that is like...
The Tyger. Did you read the Tyger?
Yes.
We all read the Tyger.
The shepherd to the nymph.
Oh, I haven't read that one.
So these are like 2 accompanying poems. One of them is a shepherd going to a nymph going, come live with me and be my love. Come and live with me, it's gonna be amazing. And then another poet wrote a response, which is like the nymph to the shepherd. And she's like, yeah, it's great. If I had all the time in the world, I probably would, but like, no.
I got this.
And then there's this one called We Are 7 by William Wordsworth, you know. For some reason, that was just one that I read and I really liked. It's about how a man meets this young child and he's like, oh, how many brothers and sisters do you have? And he's like, oh, we are 7. And, you know, a couple of them have died, and he sort of explains that there's only 2 or 3 of them around. But it was at the time where people died so much. So it was like, no, they are still part of the family. So they say like,
really
we eat our porridge in the graveyard with our brothers and sisters.
Wow.
And it was quite cute
Spooky,
and morbid.
Cute. Yeah.
I like the romantic poets a lot, and then I really like the pre-Raphaelite poetry, like Goblin Market, stuff like that. So yeah, that is probably my favorite.
I love that it doesn't matter that I was in Canada and you were in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
We all read the same poem.
Yeah. And then my other favorite discovery from university is Tennyson. I wrote my bachelor's thesis on The Lady of Shalott. Yes.
Gosh darn it, that's a great one. Have you listened to The Lady of Shalott by Lorena McKenna?
Yes.
Oh my god, it's so gorgeous.
So I wrote, like, my dissertation on YA adaptations of The Lady of Shalott.
Whoa.
And how they were all, like, really kick-ass versus the actual Lady of Shalott. But, yeah, I found this little bundle of Tennyson stuff, and that was, like, the first time that I was sort of going through and reading bits and, like, finding ones that I liked from the same poet.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is called The Sisters. Had you know about that
You love
one?
sibling poetry.
Apparently I do. Also, really morbid. I like morbid poetry. I probably need to read more Emily Dickinson. It's like about this sister who is explaining that her sister was seduced by this man, and she's like, oh, he was very beautiful, and it ends up that she murdered him.
That's exciting.
Because her sister died.
Shoot. So, for me, university-wise, the one kind of, if I took a poet away from university, it was Emily Dickinson.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we did Emily Dickinson.
Yeah, it was a big part of my second year, for whatever reason they were. I think you're right.
So I did British Lit.
Okay.
Because we had to choose American or British Lit, and most people did British. So basically, I never read, like, The Great Gatsby, or, like, because in high school we just did British Lit, and then at university I just did British Lit. American literature was, like, a whole new world for me.
That's interesting, isn't it? I think because I'm Canadian, there is a real mix of British and American, our two kind of brothers, if we will. But yes, Emily Dickinson was phenomenal. I don't think she names her poems, right? Like, it's just the first line of the poem. There was one in particular that I don't remember the name of because there is no name, but it was about a frog. And, like, it was one of these, it was short, and it was one of these things where it was like, it just really, at the time, resonated with me. And it was like, to me,
this frog was like...
It was a bit of frog, yeah. But, like, looking into her life and everything was fascinating. And it was, fun fact, one of the only collections I kept from university.
Okay.
There are so many books you get throughout your degree.
Yeah, you're
and
like,
you just give them away, sell them, I'm never going to touch this.
I don't want to look at this
I don't ever want to look at it. And I kept the Emily Dickinson one. Another classic that I did not read in my degree, so this is just me adventuring out, was E.E. Cummings.
Oh, yeah?
He's not an old classic, right? He's from the 1900s.
A modern classic.
A modern classic, you could say. That's a term.
Have you seen the Taylor Swift song adapted into an E.E. Cummings film?
No. So what I found with poetry is that you hear all these names. Like, I'd heard of E.E. Cummings, but I didn't know what they were. I really want to encourage people to just go out and pick it up. Like, I picked up Ted Hughes, and it's just like, who is he? I've heard that name. I'll just pick him up.
Yeah.
T.S. Eliot, who's that guy? I'll just pick him up.
Where's our Ted Hughes?
Oh, is he over here?
You got it, yeah.
Ted Hughes. Like, I don't know who these people are. I've heard the name. You don't need to feel like you need an education in it.
You don't need to know anything about poetry to enjoy it. Sometimes it gets more fun.
Yeah.
Because, like, that, like, We Are Seven one, I was like, oh, you know a bit of the background. And also, I feel like once you read a couple of different poets from the same time, you start figuring it out. It's like, but also you don't need to, because poetry means something different to everyone. Also,
no, exactly.
You can read it for the first time and go, I didn't get that.
And then
just read it again.
And this happens to me a lot. Like, when I got super excited about poetry, I bought so much poetry. And then I would just be like, I don't get it. And I was like, what's this? No, I don't really get it.
Sometimes you just don't connect with it.
No, you don't
connect
even
more with them with books. I think you need to find the right poetry for you.
Is so unique to the author. Everyone has such a distinct, bizarre way of writing their poetry that some is going to make sense to you and some isn't. But E.E. Cummings, for me, he's very kind of considered one of the first kind of experimental poets. Because he would, like, do weird line breaks, and he had a lot of brackets that were involved in his most famous poem.
They're very visual.
They are very visual. One of his most famous poems is I Carry Your Heart, and it's very popular at weddings and stuff because it's so beautiful, and I love it. Like, I don't even care that it's cliche. I just think it's so beautiful.
Some of my favorite poetry is, like, mega cliche.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And another classic poet, Allen Ginsberg, of the Beat Poets. So if you didn't do American Lit, you might have missed out on this genius. He did a poem called Howl.
I've read Howl.
Guys, go read Howl. I had to read it in front of my class, not the whole thing, but in the beginning portion of it. It is really rude. But, like, to read out loud in front of your teacher.
But they tried to ban it, right?
No, yeah, like that. It was really interesting. Yeah. If you look into his history, he had a whole obscenity trial, and like that poem really pushed forward the concept of what you can write.
Yeah,
those are probably all my classics that I can think of. Let's move on to some of the moderns.
We've got like a bunch of stuff here, and it's stuff that we have read or we want to read. Mm-hmm. So I want to merge the two things we were just talking about, which was Ted Hughes
this is a good
and Emily Dickinson. Hope is a thing with feathers. Grief is the thing with feathers.
Yeah, so if we had Emily Dickinson and Ted Hughes and then just fathered this idea.
Yeah, so basically, this is one that I read last year, and it was too late to include in my favorite books of the year.
Yeah.
But it's definitely one of my favorite ones of the year, and now I don't know what to do with it, so I'm mentioning it here. This should have been on the list.
Yeah.
This is gorgeous. You know when you, like, you've got poetry bundles or books where you're like, this is obviously going to be good. I know it's going to be good, and you read it and you're like, it's better than I thought it was going to be. This is like a 10-star one. Yeah. I loved this. And it's about grief. It's about a father and two boys. And it has a crow in it. And it is just... Have you read it?
I haven't. I own it, but I haven't read it.
Please read it. You can sit down in one go and read it. It has like witty, sarcastic stuff. It's really heartbreaking. There will be bits that you read and you're like, what's going on? Just keep reading. Just go to the end. And then see how you feel about it at the end. And so basically it's inspired by this one.
Yeah.
Correct?
So the crow in this one.
Yeah, which I actually don't know anything about, so I'm going to put that one down.
We'll read it later.
I wanted to read this because I've read this.
Yeah.
And then I was like...
Okay, so one that kind of relates to... I'm trying to make a connection. There really isn't. It's a little spooky. Have you ever read poetry by Tim Burton?
No.
Oh, man. He's great. Okay. So obviously Tim Burton, famous director of all of these giant films, has some poetry collections. He has this little poetry collection called The Melancholy of Oyster Boy.
Okay.
Right? Like, it's got that Tim Burton creepiness, but they're really adorable. They're really... they have little illustrations. I really recommend it if you're looking for something super kind of funny.
Yeah.
They're very...
And, like, accessible, I guess.
Accessible. Yeah. They're very comical. But my number one modern poetry recommendation is Dear Boy by Emily Berry.
This is my copy, so I have it. So
yeah,
I
you
can
have it.
Go
so
and
you
read
need to go and read it. One of the things that I love about this collection is that it's very readable. So it's not very confusing.
Is there a topic?
Another reason that I love it is that one of the main themes is long distance relationships. And I am in a long-distance relationship, have been for 2.5 years. And I, like, her explanations of it, her pain, like, I was just like, oh my god, she gets it. I super recommend this. And she has a new collection called Stranger Baby that I haven't read yet, but is also getting rave
I also have that. I'm just like, I'm going to take this.
That's yours.
Yeah. I just want to bring this one up as one that I read at university, and it's Seeing Things by Seamus Heaney.
Oh, yeah.
So this is, like, more modern, and also I think Seamus Heaney passed away a couple of years ago. But there was one that I remember in here. See, this is the thing. I love reading poetry out loud. Yes. I will sit by myself and read it out loud. Same with, like, Shakespeare. I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to read this out loud. And so there's some that I feel like just have imprinted themselves in my brain. It's this one. It's called 1187. It's only 3 lines. You can't see this at all. It's only 3 lines. It says, dangerous pavements, but I faced the ice this year with my father's stick. This was one of the first poetry bundles that was like modern, more modern, and I read this and I was like, I get this. And I feel like sometimes it takes one where you're like, okay, I'm getting a theme. Like, you need to learn. Yeah. You don't have to, but you sort of figure out, like, right, you just go and you read everything and you sort of let it wash over you. Mm-hmm. And as you read it, you're like, I think I'm getting a theme. I think I'm figuring it out.
Okay, well, since you've mentioned reading that one out loud, I would like to mention a spoken word poet.
Okay.
So, if you are a little like, what is this whole poetry thing? Welcome to Spoken Word. Yeah. Because that's so free, because it's all on YouTube. Look up Sarah Kay. So I'm going to link you to a video that you can link down below. And it is a TED Talk about spoken word. And she starts it with a spoken word performance. That poem is so good. She's talking to her daughter that doesn't exist. She doesn't have a daughter.
This.
Have you seen this?
Yeah, I feel like I've seen it.
So she doesn't have a daughter, but she's speaking to this daughter and kind of like how she hopes that she would raise a daughter. It's such a great poem. And I found, like, when coming into poetry, spoken word was a really fun, accessible, interesting way to get into it. And it made me want to perform, which I then did. Yes. And, like, it really got me into it. So I think that, especially for people who are watching this video, if you like videos, look up spoken word and start with Sarah Kay.
I'm going to quickly go through my little to-read list that I have. Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur.
Canadian.
You've read this, correct?
Yes.
Yes. I'm quite excited with this. It has illustrations. I've heard some people that really, really love it, some people that are like a bit in the middle, so I'm excited to see where.
I'm going to be making a video on poetry soon.
Okay.
And all I'm going to say is I'm going to make a whole video about this, but all I'm going to say about this is I'm super frustrated by people who read that book and then say this doesn't count as poetry.
George the Poet, Search Party. So this is one that when I heard about it, I thought it wasn't quite my thing.
Sure.
Then I saw him perform.
And you're like, you are definitely my favorite.
Okay, no, this is amazing. So, ooh, that cracked very nicely. So the one that I've seen him read is Passion Fruit. And it feels really like this is about the world, like his world.
Right.
And our world. And London. I'm going by this one poem that I've heard. I'm sure there's a huge variety of stuff in here. But basically, it just feels really real and really relevant.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool. And it's like, it's called Passion Fruit, that one. But it's full of passion, basically. Really like that. The Bees by Carol Ann Duffy. I know nothing about this except that
I've heard lots about her.
Sure. At some point I'm doing a bee book review.
Do you
I've
like
said
bees?
this before. I really like bees, but also I have like many covers that have bees on it.
Yeah.
Or bees in the titles. This is the thing that's
That would
happening.
be a great video.
Ariel. Sylvia Plath. Haven't read any
Can
poetry.
I tell you something?
What?
I've read Ariel.
Yeah.
I didn't understand
didn't.
it. I didn't get it. And I was like, no wait, this is named after me, or I'm named after it, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I need to understand it. So I read it again, and I was like, I don't get it. So I Googled it. It's about a horse.
Oh. Spoilers, jeez. Also, on the back it says, I rise with my red hair, and I eat men like air. Just gonna leave it there. Also, Kate Tempest. I just remembered. Kate Tempest.
How have we not mentioned
I've
Kate
talked
Tempest?
about Kate Tempest in a previous video, which is so good. But also, she has an album that is like spoken word rap.
Yes. It is. It's a
Poetry.
mixture of rap and
So,
poetry.
I'm gonna link that as well. So good.
My final one is a shout out to our pal Savannah Brown. She released this collection called Graffiti and Other Poems.
Yeah.
You can get it on her socials.
Yeah, she just launched a second edition with like a bonus
with
content.
some new bonus poems and stuff. I really love this edition because I think this is literally the perfect gateway for any young person trying to find poetry.
Also, Savannah's still really young as well.
Yeah.
I feel very old sometimes.
This collection she wrote between, I think, the ages of like 15 and 18.
Yeah, probably.
So the poems are about being a teenager.
Yeah.
And written by a teenager, right? So it's very good.
Illustrations in it as well, which is always... Oh, I've got a cute postcard in here. A little mole.
Yeah,
asleep.
they have
You can't see any
adorable
of this,
little
but
illustrations as
it's really
well.
lovely.
Those are our poetry recommendations.
Poetry 101. We did it. This is... I've broken the, like, poetry. I've cracked the poetry. Yeah, so I'm really glad I had you here for this.
Yeah,
I think
thanks. It was fun. I had a great time.
If you have any poetry recommendations... Or, like, just thoughts about poetry, favorites, let us know in a comment below. And then they can keep an eye out for a video on your channel about poetry.
Yes.
And that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Links to all the books. It's gonna be a lot of words.
That's gonna be
will be in the description.
Doei!